Hey guys, it's Harbinger here. So I wanted to show people how I do my beginning crops or start out farming on servers that I'm new to or fresh wipe servers. In this method, I go and I find, I wouldn't say the best quality soil that I could find, because honestly I'm not going to spend that much time on the starter crops because they're going to be one quality seeds and everything that you find anyway. When you target the ground and any grass, you can gather wild plants. We've had a few harvests here, as you can see in my inventory, so we don't need to do that right now. You may already know how to do that. This, you take the stack of 30 or whatever amount of dirt you have, stack it into stacks of 15, smaller than 30. And you can do as I'm doing now and walk to each and every tile and actually drop the dirt on that tile one at a time. Whenever you stack anything less than 30 but above 15 or 15 or above, it actually tracks on the server or in the game as raising the ground just like you would with 30 dirt. So you can sort of split one stack of 30, which would increase only by 1, into two 15s, which then you could increase twice. So you want to do that with your dirt. Here I think I have 65 to 70-ish quality dirt for farming, and that's going to help us out in getting better quality out of that beginner one quality vegetables and seeds that you can find on the ground. When you start off, that's all you're really going to have if nobody gave you produce and seeds to start off with. This method helps without the use of dung. When you start out, you may not always have dung unless your neighbor can just hand you just way too much dung. So if you shouldn't in the beginning of the game, especially on a fresh wipe, have any access to dung from the stables or the barn, or coops aren't really a good source of dung for big farms, but they produce it. This way you go out and you grab soil and you drop it on the ground just like I'm doing. I'm dropping fertile soil over unfertilized soil from a previous harvest. You can keep doing this and doing this, but eventually your crop is going to be higher level than everything else. It's going to look maybe a little bit out of place. So you might, if you do this method a lot like I used to do, you might end up having to go back every couple harvests and shovel up a little bit of dirt and maybe use it for terraforming or something, because it's not really going to be that good for farming, especially in the winter. I know that using unfertilized soil that has already had a crop grown on it, it can reduce quality, especially over time. It'll eventually keep degrading the quality of your product. So as you can see, it's winter here, and that's going to cause us issues whenever we get into harvest time. It reduces the quality of your harvest by a lot. I've seen in springtime gathering no less than 8 wheat, flax, whatever, per tile. In winter, the most I've seen per tile is 3. So you're going to want to try your hardest to kind of fight that as much as you can with things like planning for shadows. As you can see, there's a shadow here in front of the warehouse. You might notice that one side of your crop gets more shadow than the other does during the day. So one side's going to have more in the morning and one side's going to have more in the afternoon in this sort of setup. Or if you have any trees around, any buildings that you're building. So the middle of your crop is going to be where you want to sort of place your most valuable or sought after crop, your plants. In this case, it's going to be wheat. We need wheat to get our barns and stables up so that we can have cows, stick leather, and everything else, and dung. But back to the farming matter here. You want to be in the middle with your most valuable crop, like I said. And that just so happens to be our wheat right now. If you pay attention to the shading around the area, and it doesn't have to be buildings like we have around, it could be trees, it could be anything. We sort of built in a foresty area, so we have to, no matter what, bring fertile soil back to where we want to farm, because we're not going to be able to plow up what we have. So in some cases you may have to do this fertile soil method anyway, but the reason why we chose this spot is because it was easily defendable within our claim, with buildings around. We're not. It would be harder to be caught out in the open because it's really not that open. You'll have issues with raiders, bandits, horsemen riding by and maybe trying to kill you with an inventory full of wheat, flax, all your heavy produce from your crop. And if you can't run away, I mean, you've got an issue. So you also have to think about where you're going to put your farm, and it may be in the way, just like ours kind of is, but it saves you from maybe getting attacked and losing, 18, 20 hours, however long it takes your crop to grow, worth of work. So it's something to think about, as well, your crop placement. But mostly, if you're worried about production of your crop, you need to look at where those shadows are. The winter is also hard whenever you have these random snow piles that supposedly fall. They just sort of spawn in random spots in the winter. You'll find them as you run around through the woods and everything else. But they can spawn on your crop, and whatever that snow lands on, it sort of ruins the tiles underneath. So that's going to ruin your garden just as if you stepped over it and dropped soil on it. So you got to be careful for those in winter too. You can't really do anything to stop them, I'm told. I'm not sure. I enjoy the challenges of winter like that. It's sort of difficult to get on and get your crops growing effectively like you could in the spring, summer times, and so on. They're really easy in the spring and summer. Anybody can be a farmer then. It's in the winter that you need to figure out these kind of tips and tricks to tweak your farming style into creating the most productive crops that you can in the winter when everybody else is failing and maybe they don't know about the shade trick. If your shade is turned off, if your shadows are turned off in the settings, the server still tracks them, so you need to maybe turn them on even if it makes you lag, just to see where your shadows are during what time of the day. A lot of people might have that turned off, so then this becomes competitive farming, and your crops might be better than them just because you can track where the shadows are. But the biggest thing is if you follow these methods, and getting your fertile dirt, instead of ignoring fertilizer whenever you just don't have the dung, it's best to go out and get that dirt, and stack it in the 15s, or I guess you could stack it in the 30s if you really want. It's up to you. But stacking them into 15, dropping them down, and then moving on to the next tile. If you get these done, you can have a more productive crop than your neighbor maybe, and then you've got a trade commodity here in the winter where everything crop related is hard to get, like your flax for your ropes and your wheats for your animals. Whenever your neighbor's lacking, maybe you could get a little bit of work out of them. Oh hey, yeah, I've got plenty of that. We have a little more than we need. Maybe you could do some work for me and I'll get you some rope. But It's a competitive game, this Life is Feudal, so you really want to take every advantage that you can get. That way you can be that successful village off in the woods somewhere that has their secrets for producing tons and tons of goods in the winter. When you look at it this way and kind of do whatever you need to be productive, you're gonna have a lot of success on these servers you play in. People are gonna need you around, sort of. So use these as you will, guys. I'm gonna show a example of shadows and how they draw out during the day. As you can see, it's getting darker, so we're gonna see the shadows start to kind of cover up the crop a little bit and where our problem areas are gonna be in the evening. Okay guys, right here you can see how the shade starts to stretch on out over this part of the crop. This is what you got to be careful for whenever you're planning where you're going to actually plant. I would have the same issue over here on the other side from the trees and everything. Seeing as it's only evening right now, I don't have that issue. This is why you want to make sure, if you have shade around in the area, make sure you plant your most valuable crop right there in the middle so you don't have that much of an issue, guys. But that's about it. You guys use this information how you want. This is how I do it. I've got a good few hours in Life is Feudal, but I'm no expert. Take it easy, guys. Have fun.